When I was a kid, I used to sneak into my parents' cupboard and pull out the movies I wasn't supposed to watch. You know the ones with the strange covers, the ones that almost felt wrong to touch. Usually they were horror movies. There was something different about the ones with crosses on the cover, the ones that whispered about heaven and hell, instead of just killers and monsters. The Exorcist, The Omen, and fairly recently The Unholy. To me, those weren't just scary, they felt dangerous. Like watching them might invite something into the room with you. Even if you don't grow up religious, biblical horror had a way of making you believe, if only for a couple of hours. Because these weren't stories about ghosts or vampires, they were stories about faith, guilt, punishment, and the unseen war between light and darkness. And for me, no film captures that strange, uneasy energy better than The Exorcist 3. When The Exorcist 3 was released in 1990, it wasn't trying to recreate the original's head-spinning chaos. It wasn't about pea soup or levitation. It's about something quieter, more unsettling, the persistence of evil. Written and directed by William Peter Blatty, the author of the original Exorcist novel, this was his chance to make the story he wanted. A story not about the devil's power, but about humanity's frailty. The film follows Lieutenant Kinderman, played by George C. Scott, in probably one of my favourite turns an actor has portrayed on screen. A man haunted by an unsolved murder case and by the memory of his friend, Father Karras, who died years earlier during an exorcism. Now a string of brutal killings in Georgetown. Each murder mimics the methods of the Gemini killer, a serial murderer long dead. And as Kinderman investigates, he discovers something impossible. A patient in the psychiatric ward who looks exactly like Father Karras, claiming to be the Gemini killer. The Exorcist 3 is a film about faith, but not in the way you'd expect. It's not preaching, it's not wrestling. Kinderman isn't a believer. He's a tired man in a world where miracles have stopped happening, and yet he keeps bumping into things that suggest the old battles, angels, demons, the soul, might not be over after all. And that's the power of biblical horror. It doesn't demand belief, it tempts it. It uses a fear as a gateway into something spiritual. Even for people who don't pray, it creates a kind of religious experience. A cinematic urgency of dread. The candles, the Latin, the chants, the rituals, they're more than aesthetic. They remind us that fear and faith live in the same part as the human brain. And then there's that scene. If you've seen The Exorcist 3, you knew this was coming. If you've been on YouTube for the past 10-15 years, you know what I'm talking about. If you've seen any jump scare list in the past 10-15 years, you know what's coming. A nurse quietly walks around in a silent hospital. Nothing happens what feels like forever. I think the take itself is, it's 30 seconds long. It actually breaks up, which I get frustrated when people talk about this online because they all forget there is actually a false scare in the middle of all this. And if you're listening to the scene previously, we actually get a hint that something's going to happen to this poor nurse. The nurse's name is Amy Keating, and as previously discussed with the Gemini killer through Kinderman, he only kills people with the letter K. That gives you a little nod in the scene if you're listening. That something terrible is going to happen to this poor woman. It's a masterclass in tension, a jump scare that's earned through patience, silence, and dread. But beneath the shock, it carries the same theme that runs through the whole movie. Evil doesn't announce itself, it waits, and that's what makes it so terrifying. That's biblical horror in a nutshell. Not chaos, patience. Not blood, belief. The devil doesn't need to roar. He just needs you to stop believing that he's there. When When I think back to sneaking those VHS tapes from the cupboard, I realise something. I wasn't just chasing scares, I was chasing understanding. I wanted to see what adults were so afraid of. What I found wasn't just monsters or blood, it was belief. The kind of belief that makes your skin crawl and your thoughts spiral. It feels just too big to comprehend. For me, that's the legacy of biblical horror. It blurs the line between cinema and ceremony. It makes you confront not just death, but judgment. It reminds us that sometimes the most terrifying thing isn't that the devil exists, it's that maybe so does everything else.
I have dreams of a rose and of falling down a long flight of steps.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining in and thank you for making it to the end of this video. Really hope you enjoyed. This is just the start of something. We're going to build on this and build on it and see where it goes. Click down below for a link to episode 2, which me and my friend Chloe discuss again on the Monster series from Netflix. Have a great Halloween everybody, and I'll see you again soon.